So this is April 24, 2009. This is a continuation of the self-forgiveness list, which I'm doing to assist myself, as you, as all soul life, during this time that I separated from my husband, so that as I help myself, I help you too, I assist you too. And I saw this self-forgiveness list from destiny.co.za in the internet, and I'm trying this, and this is working for me, so I'm going on with this. So this is the second part. Okay, I forgive myself to have allowed myself to believe that I need the ego of the mind to protect myself, to defend myself, and to protect and defend others. I forgive myself that I haven't allowed myself to realize that the ego of the mind enjoys conflict, fighting, and arguments, and thus will always attempt to get involved within such situations, to step forth and say, "Here I am, this is the ego, come try and fuck with me and I'll show you who I am." I forgive myself that I've allowed myself to believe that I need the ego of the mind to be strong. I forgive myself that I've allowed myself accept and believe that I need the ego of the mind to be powerful. I forgive myself that I've allowed myself to actually think and believe that by calming the ego of the mind, presenting the deception to others of me being superior, will actually protect me in defense. I forgive myself that I haven't allowed myself to realize that I've accepted and allowed myself to become, be, and participate as the ego of the mind within the experience of myself in the world. I forgive myself that I haven't allowed myself to realize that the ego of the mind always desires, wants, and needs fighting, conflict, and arguments to generate itself within me as me. I forgive myself that I haven't allowed myself to realize that the ego of the mind is generated through anger, frustration, and hatred, and will seek and search and get involved in situations or scenarios to instigate anger, frustration, and hatred within me to generate itself with. I forgive myself that I haven't allowed myself to realize that ego is the echo of the mind, the lost part of me I have separated myself from, becoming the demon within me, existing of the generation and instigation of anger, frustration, and hatred. I forgive myself that I haven't allowed myself to realize the ego of the mind is the representation of the demon within me, the part of me that I have accepted and allowed myself to separate myself from, because I could not imagine such a thing to exist within me. I forgive myself that I have allowed myself to split me from myself within me, manifesting the demon as the ego of the mind. I forgive myself that I haven't allowed myself to realize that inferiority is actually in fear and terror, in fear and horror of facing myself, in fear and horror of myself, in fear and horror of the demon I have occupied and allowed. Never horror of the in fear and horror of the demon I have accepted and allowed myself to become as the ego of the mind. I forgive myself that I've allowed myself to use the ego of the mind to manipulate situations to have it be my way. I forgive myself that I haven't allowed myself to realize that when the ego is bruised, the ego will feel pumped and wired to go back to the situation that caused the ego bruising, to once again assert itself, regenerate itself, to say, "I am here, look at me, look at what I can do." Okay, we'll continue on, but don't forget to breathe in between the self-forgiveness lists, or in between videos, okay? I mean, not breathe because you're always breathing, but being aware of your breath as it goes in, pause, out, pause. Okay, cool.